I'm Paul Huizinga, this is Lake Speed Jr. We're here at Driven Racing Oils, and when you hear racing oils, you think lubricants, but there's also a lot of functional chemicals that they produce. I've had some experience with their Carb Defender, which is terrific when you're talking about pump gas. It's got E85, anything like that that's got alcohol in it that possibly is going to harm your seals. I've had a real positive experience with that, but you've got a lot of different stuff going on here now.
Oh yeah, the success of the Carb Defender in protecting carburetors and the fuel systems from ethanol and pump gas has been overwhelming. In fact, even on the race side, the guys who are using like the race concentrate and straight methanol has really kind of broadened our scope, if you will, and looked at other applications, from in fuel-injected vehicles, turbo diesels that require cetane improvers and all that. But one really interesting little caveat was that we have more and more guys who are doing like autocross, or you're in a class where you can run pump gas, right, because of what the compression rules are, but you're right on the edge in terms of detonation and the fuel. So we came up with a Defender Plus booster, and the booster being an octane booster. And octane boosters are typically lead substitutes. And one cool thing about them, they kind of do two things. Not only do they increase the octane, which is a very good thing in a performance engine, even not from a performance, I make more horsepower, but tuning ability, right? A little safer on your tune-up, especially in a carbureted vehicle, but also valve seat recession protection, right? When you're running an unleaded fuel and you're running a race engine, be it a Chevy crate motor, or just whatever it is, any kind of production engine in a race environment, be it autocross or circle track or street strip applications, the Defender Plus booster gives you that extra level of margin of protection, not only from the ethanol in the fuel, corrosion protection, fuel storage protection, because a lot of these vehicles don't race all the time. Sometimes they're a bit of a daily driver, but they sit during the winter, so it keeps your fuel from going bad. So kind of an all-around, all-encompassing thing with the fuel additives now.
So it's just a real smart bit of insurance no matter how you're using the vehicle. You've got that extra tuning margin for protection from detonation. You've got the storage advantages. It seems like it's just a win all the way around.
Exactly. It's kind of like, if you look at what these guys are doing with these engines, in that street strip, application, track day type application, where pump fuel falls short of race gas, we're coming up with something that kind of bridges that gap. It's not race fuel. We're not saying it takes pump gas and turns it into race fuel, by no means. But it does give you a stopgap in between that does cover all those avenues for them.
Well, now let's take a step a little bit further from the weekend warrior kind of guy. I see we've got something a little more hardcore here. We've got some shock fluid that we're looking at.
Oh yeah, of course. Number one rule of race car vehicle dynamics is tires. First chapter in the engineering book is tires. Why? The guy who makes the best use of all four tires, in a car at least, right, wins. And how do you do that? You got to keep the tire contact patch in contact with the track, and you do that through your suspension. Well, what helps control the suspension, keeps all those springs and everything's moving, dampening force is shocks. And a shock absorber, the fluid, is part of the shock. And one of the interesting things with shock fluids are, all fluids get thinner as they get hotter, which means you lose a dampening force. Other thing people don't really typically know is most shock fluids are what they call non-Newtonian. All right, so we're trying to get too technical here, but which means is the viscosity changes with shear rate. Basically, the way I think it is, the harder you push it, the thinner it gets, right? Which is kind of not what you want. Right? So we actually have developed a Newtonian shock fluid, which is the SHX, which the viscosity does not change no matter how fast the shock motion is. So it acts like a light fluid all the time, but when you shear it, it doesn't thin out more. It maintains its viscosity relative to shear, which is really great.
So you end up with a much more progressive response curve then.
Yes, basically the SHX gives the shock tuner ultimate control in terms of how the build works. And we've got a lot of guys who are onto this stuff now who are like, the shock builders are probably the worst or the most secretive guys in the whole business. They find anything like that, they're like, don't tell anybody.
All right, well, Driven is always coming out with all sorts of new stuff. What's the best way to keep up with you guys and everything that you're coming out with?
DrivenRacingOil.com is our website. We have all kinds of tech videos on that. Typically, press releases are on there with new products and everything like that. Plus we have a pretty good tech library on there of articles and things we publish. So yeah, DrivenRacingOil.com is the best place to go to kind of find out the latest, greatest on what we're coming up with.
Well, be sure to check that out online. I'm Paul Huizinga for Power Auto Media. Keep it right here. We've got a whole bunch of PRI 2015 stuff for you to look at.